they get home. Redemption is complete. And the fourth reason there, this passage I think suggests, is the purpose of the New Jerusalem is that it will be home. Home for the redeemed. The only qualification there is that we be thirsty. We have an anxious. We want to know God. We have a desire to know God. Here is the promise to satisfy the thirst. People who want more, who want God, are promised that they will drink of the water of the spring of life. That's the overcomers that he referred to earlier in the book. We will inherit heaven. Now, verse 8 is a description of those who will not be admitted. And I think, and I was thinking about it the other day, I was thinking maybe this verse is referred to more than any other verse in the New Testament by the unsaved anyway. See what it says. But the cowards, the unbelievers, the vile, murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, their share will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. And I think I hear that quoted when you go to a car dealer or when you talk with somebody selling something. All liars are going to have their place in hell. You know the Bible tells you that. But there's a lot of other people who's going to have their place in hell. And these people are going to be eliminated. Three attitudes that result in, I think, in the evil deeds there. There's the cowards. They're people who are afraid to take the yoke of Christ. They're afraid to confess Christ. And they're unwilling to accept Christ. Then there's the unbelieving. They refuse the evidence, and they know the facts, but they refuse them, and they turn their backs on it. They actually reject God. That mindset. And then there's the corrupt or the depraved, the vile, the foul. And they gradually become that way, that mindset, that attitude is something when you begin to feed the wrong things into your mind, then these things begin to grow out of it. And we see the things that grows out of it. It will flow murders and fornication, adultery, occult practices, and finally hypocritical living. And Jesus warned that. Those who profess to be Christians, but really there is no change in their lives. None who practice these activities will be in the city of God. That's a lifestyle. If that's your lifestyle, you don't have a ticket for heaven. Notice verse 9 through 27, John gives us another vision of the great city of God. We see the structure of the city. Now, God loves to use literal things that remain symbols. For example, anybody know what that is? It's a cross. Some of you missed it, didn't you? But that's a cross. Now, that's a literal cross. You can go up and you can touch it, you can feel it. That's a literal cross. But what does that cross stand for? What's the symbolism there? It's a symbol of the death of Christ. We're reminded of the sacrifice Christ made. When we see the cross, we realize Christ died for us. It's a symbol to remind us of that. And there's a lot of symbols in the New Testament, and there's a lot of symbols in the book of Revelation. I believe there will be a great visible city with incredible brilliance and glory located somewhere right now above us in the atmosphere. And there we'll see the relationships, we'll see the activities that are going on within the community of the saints. Now, we don't know much about our new bodies, but the Bible teaches that we're going to get a new body. The literal is very evident. The symbolic sometimes gives us a little bit of struggle in interpretation. But our bodies are going to be like Jesus. Now, what was Jesus' body like? Well, it was real. It had some semblance of his earlier life. He's got the scars and stuff. He just appeared through walls. He was able to eat. He enjoyed fellowship with other believers. And I'm thinking in heaven, I'm just waiting to get there and get my new body. No arthritis, no pains, no calories, and no sugar to worry about. I'm looking forward to that. And, we'll want to go. And I'd like to go see the other side of the world and see the waterfalls. Boop! You're there. Zip! You're there. Wow! New bodies. I'm looking forward to that. Well, let's get back to our story here. There will be a community of saints in the new heaven. We don't know much about the new bodies, but we know there are different molecular makeups. But it's going to be awesome. The literal is very evident. The symbolic, sometimes we need to interpret, and there's different interpretations. But there's a high wall there. Let me read a few verses there. Where was that? Verse 9. Then one of the seven angels, I read that a moment ago about being the guide. Look down in verse 11. Well, verse 11, it says, arrayed with God's glory, her radiance was like a very precious stone, like a jasper stone, bright as crystal. Seems like most scholars, they said it's like a jasper stone, but it's probably a huge diamond. This city had a massive high wall. This high wall had 12 gates around it. It had 12 angels were at the gate. And I don't think any of those guards at the gates was Simon Peter.